Welcome back to another edition of Ted's Library, where we look at the books that I have bought for very cheap from bookstores. Goodwill technically counts. There's also a half-price books and a Bookman's that I go to. Today, we will be talking about some books that I picked up, and I'm very excited to read, but I want to see what everybody's opinions of them are. So, we are going to start with book number 1. This book is Sundiver by David Brin. This is part of the Uplift series about, if I'm not mistaken, I try not to read too much into what's going on with books so it doesn't ruin it for me, but in all the universe, no species has ever reached for the stars without the guidance of a patron, except perhaps mankind. Interesting idea. I know there's other ones. Startide Rising, I think, is another book in the series that's supposed to be better. I don't know. I don't know anything about these series, but it looked cool. The other one has a dolphin with like a cyborg headpiece. That's pretty fucking sick. All right, on to the next book. The next book in the library is Robin Hobb's Ship of Magic. I've heard a lot about this series, and I really enjoyed reading Assassin's Apprentice not that long ago. I'm a pretty big fan of the Game of Thrones books, and she has a similar style in that she is very verbose. She writes a lot, and this book is a lot of pages, and so I'm a little bit daunted by it. 8 hundos. I'm a little daunted by this and the 2 other books that are the same length, if not longer, in the series, but I've heard it's great, so I'm very much looking forward to it, and the next book. All right, these next 2 books are by the same author, so I'm going to kind of segue from one to the other. The first one is the first book in the Baroque cycle by Neal Stephenson, Quicksilver. Interesting. I'm a huge fan of science, just in general, the concept of it and the advancement of technologies, and this is apparently a science fiction book about the very beginnings of the Enlightenment and science and stuff like that. And Isaac Newton's a wizard. I'm making this up. I don't know. That could be cool. Maybe I'll write that. But this is it? You think it would be like Jesus magic if Newton had magic? Anyway, Quicksilver, very interesting. I got it for pretty cheap at a bookstore. $4. Not bad. Neal Stephenson also wrote a book that is a little bit newer than this one called 7 Eves by Neal Stephenson. Yeah, that's right. This book, conceptually, is pretty crazy. I try not to read too much into the plots and what's going to happen in books. I don't like spoilers and things, but man, looking forward to it. 7 Eves sounds really cool. And on to the next book. For the next book, we're going a little bit back in time to 1962 for Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Were you afraid of clowns and circuses? Well, I don't know what this book is about, but that looks like something to do with a crazy circus. There's a circus. It's like an evil circus. I'm ready to have nightmares. I'm a fan of Bradbury. I really liked Fahrenheit 451 when I read it in middle school, and I was a pretty big fan of The Illustrated Man. I think those short stories are cool. There are definitely stronger ones amongst the kind of the weaker ones in that collection, but you know, each one kind of speaks to a different person in a different way. So I'm looking forward to some more Bradbury, and on to the final 2 books. The second to last book is the first installment in a very epic long fantasy series, a series that I think people will have at the top of their best of lists, and that is Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. I'm excited to read this. I've heard a lot of, let's say, interesting opinions about Malazan, which is this is the first book in the Malazan series, Book of the Fallen. It's a huge expanded thing. I've heard a lot about this series. Again, trying not to learn about it. Apparently this is one where you gotta kind of spend some time and really learn and do a little bit of back if you want to understand everything. I don't know. We're good. We'll see what's up. Series that are this long are extremely daunting. And I think this series only pales in comparison to the series of our next book, which is The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan, Book 4 in the Wheel of Time. Yeah, I've read the first 3, and they were fine. They were great. Maybe not great. They were okay. And I like understanding people's opinions. That's why a lot of the books that I've read recently have been really good, and it's because I spend a lot of time making sure that the books I read are good books, because I don't want to spend a bunch of time reading a bad book. So I'm skeptical of the series, but a lot of people say that this is where it turns around. I'm not a fit. Like, come on, make your whole series good. And I don't know. I love this argument of like, I don't know when you're watching this, but Starfield just came out, the Bethesda game. If you know anything about games. And one of the arguments is like, man, yeah, once you're like 12 hours in, that's when it really starts to get good. And I just don't understand that. I don't want it to be bad at all. Why would I? And so like, I'm hesitant to continue reading Wheel of Time. It's just so much. It's so daunting. I love a good trilogy. That's something that I could conceivably read all 3 books right in a row of. But man, 14, come on. Oh, man, let me know if it's worth continuing to read, because I don't know if I'm going to, because there's so many other series. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you for joining me on this short journey through Ted's library. Interesting sci-fi and fantasy books that I picked up for fairly cheap. This one was $4. $4. I will see you guys on the next episode of Ted's Library. Well, that's sexist.